Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. So, Strangeworks, not everyone's heard of us, been around now for about 4 years. We started out with community, so worked with Stack Overflow and built up a large community there to really gain knowledge, use that knowledge to build a few different dev tools, and then built them into a platform. So the image at the top there is quantumcomputing.com, currently available. It was intended to be our education platform, easy, one-click getting started. And we moved from there to what is now kind of our enterprise approach, and what you're going to see today is a bit of a sneak preview of what's going to be available in the not-too-distant future. So, before we get started, as an organization, we are very much a software team, and so we recognize that software has one job, and that job is to try and eliminate complexity. However, everyone out there keeps telling me that quantum is really complex. So how do you take the two? And basically, we made everything software. So everything within our platform, and I'll give you a demo in a minute, is effectively a resource that is then deployable. It can be customized to your needs, and you'll see an example of that one in a minute. And then we make sure that everything is tried, tested, and so it's very dependable. From a platform perspective, we basically make it easier for you to select whether it's an application or it's a hardware resource, a GPU, a CPU, a QPU. Select what it is that you need across the advanced computing space, so not just on the quantum side. Then apply those technologies or those applications to your particular problems in the environments you want. And so we have an SDK that's available. And then most importantly, the thing on the right is the manage. There's a lot of organizations out there, there's a lot of different applications, so what we're trying to do is solve some of those problems that are more enterprise focused. So how do I manage the costs across different platforms, across different hardware systems, across different application costs? How do I manage teams? And then how do I manage these different resources? We also recognize that we don't try and do it alone. And I was at the sessions at the beginning of this morning. BCG talked about how it's important to partner with organizations and bring these folks together. And so we currently have a partner network of 37 different groups, and there'll be a few more hopefully before the end of the year. And we work with them. We have hardware partners, which we touched on. We have software and application development teams. We have consulting partners, and then we also work in the government education space because that's kind of where our roots came from on the education side. And so we work with all of these different partners to effectively bring you a product catalog of solutions that are either built by us or delivered through us. This is where our partners, we integrate our partner solutions, or in some cases, we customize them with you. And I'll give you an example of each one of these in a minute. So in regards to how do you get things into or onto the platform, there's a couple of different approaches. You can have applications that sit in your own environment that are prepackaged, and we effectively just do a reverse proxy API connectivity, so you can pull and utilize wherever they are, wherever they sit. Or, alternatively, you can package them up and then embed them within Strangeworks application, possibly bringing them closer to the actual QPUs. And I'll give you an example of both of those in a minute. The final one is integrate. We really built flexibility in mind, and so the idea is that regardless of where your application sits, of where the resource sits, we try and be that fabric that ties all of these bits and pieces together for you. And then as far as the platform goes, two different aspects. You've got the online environment, which is more of your kind of command and control area. It's where you manage all your resources and so on. And then we've got the SDK, which most people recognize is what your developers in your organizations are looking for. How do I tie it in? You can also access direct on the API front. So I'm going to break the cardinal rule. Hopefully this is going to work. And flick over to our live product. So this is our pre-release production. It's going to go in private preview in the new year, and then during South by Southwest in Austin, that's where we're based, we will be doing the general availability. So as you can see here, this is kind of your demo this is kind of your dashboard where everyone initially lands. Easy access to your API keys, documentation, so on and so forth. But where it gets really interesting is the product catalog. So I talked earlier about these things being definable and deployable. So if you start out with compute providers, you'll see most of the names on there. I believe we're the only place where all of the different names can come together, but happy to be fact-checked on that later. And if you take any individual compute provider, you effectively are able to add that provider as a resource, depending on whatever provider needs from a T's and C's perspective, accept them, and then add it as a resource. Each time these resources are added, they end up in your resource library. And so you can have multiple iterations without having to sign up multiple times, because we manage all of that kind of procurement aspect for you. And then each one of these instances has a resource ID. And so when your organization is trying to route the different jobs into the system, you not only use your API key, you also use your resource ID, and that can then be tied together into projects and teams, or whatever functionality or approach that it is you as an organization pulls all of these things together and wants to manage it. We try and give you the tools that make that easy. Flicking back to the catalog then, compute providers, okay, a lot of people have it, a lot of people see it. Where we're really kind of moving to, and this is the big difference compared to the current platforms that we've launched to date, are these managed applications. They're not just ours, they're third parties. You'll see on there one from Boson Q we announced on Monday, a couple from Rigetti that we announced earlier today. There's some services in there like our optimization service that is then ours. And so each one of these has effectively been a package that's either through that connect methodology or it's kind of been embedded within our environment. And they're able to add these resources, and they're all composable on top of each other. So in this particular instance, the optimization package, anything that can accept a Kubo file, so Azure, D-Wave, Toshiba's, and there's a few others out there, will be able to utilize these optimization services. The top piece of this is where it gets really interesting. So you as an organization, sure, there's a general catalog, but if you as an organization wants to build your own applications and have them available for your organizations internally, that's where your kind of top environment is. And if I flick between workspaces, you would see that particular example disappear. A couple of other bits I want to kind of touch on here. And I mentioned that the manage is important. We hear it a lot, we see it a lot. So you get team management, but team management across all of the different resources that you've effectively deployed. And each one of these then has its roles and permissions. You can manage member spending on per month basis, per time basis. You can also do that as from a workspace holistic nature. And you can have multiple workspaces within an organization should you wish. And if you need to keep things private, you can toggle the switch to be able to, so people can see things or not. And then as the members of your organizations are building and working and spending this money, that's where we then have unified billing. And so all of these billing aspects from all the different providers come into a single area. You can tag them per project, per team, so on and so forth, and really manage and start to really understand what is your spend across the total landscape that is Quantum. Final piece I'll touch on the demo side of it is the unified job management. So everyone probably sees, okay, jobs come from a different hardware provider. We've combined not just the jobs from the hardware providers, but also with the applications. And so individuals that dig into it, you can see visualizations and so on and so forth. Recognize that not everyone is going to want to work in a kind of a UI environment. And so we do have our SDK as an example there where everything's been pulled into the same kind of environment, and you quickly just change one element within it, and you can flick between an IBM system to a Rigetti system, or if you're on the annealing side, you can quickly flip between whether it's a Toshiba or a D-Wave system, it's one of Azure's simulators, you name it, it's fairly easy for you to flick back and forwards between them. So I think that's enough from a demo perspective. I'll give you a couple of examples of use cases here. First of all, our integrators. So as I mentioned earlier, on Monday we announced with Boson Q, they're a partner of ours. They are using Strangeworks in their environment for them to be able to add Quantum to their platform. So they've made a design optimization tool. They're doing finite element analysis. They're doing CFD. And their end users don't necessarily want to know or need to know the details of the Quantum side. They just need to know that it works and they get the end result. Example being on the right, they get the best optimized arm from a car at its lowest weight structure. They want the end result. They don't necessarily need to know how it's done. And so they're using Strangeworks to connect their customers with that power of the quantum without them having to go through and pick and select. Next example, applications partners. So earlier today we announced with Rigetti, these are two applications that Rigetti themselves have actually been working on for a number of years at this point. You've got the quantum kernel method, and then you've got the quantum convolutional neural net, both of which have been honed with customers specific for their systems. And so they are then being embedded, as you saw a minute ago on the demo, within our environment so that an end user can access them via standard input-output schemas. The next example, so you've got integrators, you've got application partners, finally you've got customers. This time last year, we started on a journey with Deloitte looking at ways to do quantum classification techniques and compare them to classical. The smart factory in Wichita, very interesting. I'm about to introduce Alan in a minute, who can give you a little more context in it. But basically, we worked on this project to look for defects in the housing of the smart rover and actually used a derivation on the Rigetti kernel alignment that you just saw. Initially, that was set up where we had kind of that connect approach, where the actual calculations were being done in the local environment by their engineers, and then using Strangeworks to connect out to those QPUs. Hundreds of experiments, thousands of jobs to run, we found there was latency because it was an iterative process and you had to go through. So what we did was worked with that team and effectively pulled the processing piece out of that kind of local environment, embedded it within the Strangeworks platform as an application to get it as close to the computer as possible. And we ended up with a 10x latency result. This is just one example of the types of things and the flexibility that you're able to do by building these different applications and deploying them. With that, I will let Alan from Deloitte just speak a little bit more on what they're going to do with that and take that forwards a little step further.
Sure, thanks, Steve. Could you actually go back? Let's get the rover picture up there. So the Smart Factory in Wichita is our opportunity to speak with our customers and show them the state of the art with many things on the factory floor. If you see, I'm holding the housing that we take images on the factory floor, and if you can see, it's tucked up in the top right back corner. It's sitting on top of the robot. And a lot of times what will happen is that there's cracks in these housings, and we need to make sure that they don't go out with those defects. So what we did is we took the back-end results that were ran on the platform, and then if you go forward back to the screenshots, what we do is we want to make sure that we can then demonstrate this to our customers. So we've got two quick screenshots here. And what we have is we've got, on the far left, we have green good, red bad, and we're able to just start seeing what are we picking up from the classical technique. And then what we also do is then run it alongside. You can see that there's actually 3 methods being ran. And then we have a whole other series of drill downs that we can actually get into the runs. And then we can even get into the images themselves and then even correct the labeling and then make sure that we can reprocess. The last thing that I would say is that this is part of our kind of our 3-step journey. Is one that we've wanted to do is just make sure that our customers can understand the use cases, and then also then pick a POC. And then this last piece is just making sure that we're actually taking our own medicine and that we can use this internally and we can demonstrate it out to our customers. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. So regardless of whether you are an integrator and looking to pull quantum into your own applications, whether you are a partner who already has your own applications, or they could be a hardware partner, or you're a customer that's looking to potentially build your own implementations, maybe customize them for yourselves. Maybe you're looking to take them from internal and then use us as a commercialization vehicle for you to be able to deliver those solutions you've built internally to your third parties. Really, I'll come back to what was said kind of in that first kind of presentation from BCG was partnerships is what makes all of this work, and we're very, very strong supporters of that. And so if anyone in the audience or sees this later is interested in kind of working with us, we are more than happy to have those discussions, and I'm sure there's a way we can work together. Thank you very much. And with that, I will say I think I have some time for some questions, should there be any.
You do indeed. So yes, we have time for questions, if there are any questions for Steve. I guess I have a question. No how long has the marketplace been around, and how many kind of partners do you have in there right now?
Yeah, not a problem. So the marketplace itself is actually in pre-release. So we in January we'll be doing private preview, and our existing customers will be migrated from the application they're on right now onto that new environment. And then in March, during South by, is when we'll be doing the general availability. We hope to have a number of applications on there from ourselves, and then, as you can see, some partner applications, and hopefully get a few more on there before we go to general availability.